Hello and welcome back to our last session together, looking at this idea of how to dominate your stop smoking sessions. So we've covered things like the testing cycles, we've covered things like priming. So before we get into the questioning cycle or the questioning principles we're going to use with our clients, let me give you the logical steps of how this is all going to play out. So the first step I would approach with a client is to do the questioning first, which we're about to go through in a moment. Then I would do my priming for success and safety, of course. I would set the context, let them know that their unconscious mind has done things in the past for them like this. It's going to do it again. Then I would add my therapy. Now, right now, the therapy can be anything. You can see how even if you've got one of the a not so strong approach for smokers, you can see how we've set it up for that small approach to work in any environment. So even if you have something that you're really not too sure or you haven't had a lot of success with it in the past in regards to a method or an approach, you can see how you've set it all up in your favor beforehand, so the therapy becomes irrelevant. The therapy doesn't become the whole session, it becomes a part of the session. So there's going to be certain things that'll work better than others, of course, but what I want you to realize is any technique can be put into this therapy you find what works for you, rather than looking for the one ultimate technique. Because you've done all the setup beforehand. You've got rid of all the defenses and the cynicism beforehand, so your approach can smoothly fit in and do what it needs to do. And then in the last part was having the testing cycle. And the testing cycle with the environmental testing we looked at before is actually going to connect back to the questions we're going to go through now. We looked at that in regards to finding out what a client's going to do after a session or finding out their environment they'll go home to and making sure that fits in your testing scenario as well. So let's look at these questions. Now, there's one point I want to cover throughout these questions is, again, and I will remind you, I won't be giving you exactly what questions I ask. And again, it comes under the same banner. There's no certain questions that'll help a client more than others. All I'm doing with my questioning cycle is I'm starting somewhere. I just need a place to start, and then I'm picking out information that's important. And as you become more advanced in therapy, you'll be able to set your own direction. You'll have your ideas that you'd like to use in the direction you'd like to set. These questions are always coming back to a simple formula, is just to get things going. So what's the principle that's important rather than the questions themselves? The principle right now that I want to cover is I want to dip my client into pain. I want to dip them into the problem so the neurology lights up. Let me give you an example of what this sounds like. So let's say I'm asking a client a question, say, hey, what do you want to work through? Is it smoking you want to go through or is it something else? Whatever the case may be, let's use smoking. And I say, well, what's the problem with smoking? And they go, I just want to quit because it sounds good. Now, what's the attitude I've just presented there? It doesn't sound like the client's that interested. Could I work with this as a therapist? Probably not. There would have to be things that I have to find out about, what's important about it and all that sort of stuff. But the attitude they've given me is, I really don't want to quit. I'm just maybe quitting because I should, right? Maybe someone's told me to quit. Maybe I'm here because my husband or my wife has told me that I should quit, but I really enjoy it. And as a therapist, you've probably come up against that problem before. Let's do the contrast, the opposite of that. I say to a client, why do you want to quit? What's the problem? They go, you know what, Scott? If I don't quit, I'm going to lose my job. My boss said if I take any more smoke breaks, I'm going to lose my job. If I lose my job, I'm going to lose my pay. I'm not going to be able to pay my mortgage. My wife's going to leave me, and I'm just going to feel like an absolute horrible person. Now, what's the difference? You can see how much pain my client's presenting to me. Can I work with this? Of course. Because I want some emotional leverage. Now, what the questions are about. I'm looking for emotional leverage. If I'm getting no emotional leverage from the other person we looked at with the attitude of I don't really care, it's going to be very hard as a therapist to find out the criteria I need to cover for my stop smoking session. And if they're not that interested, it probably means their unconscious mind really won't help either. Because their unconscious mind will say, hey, this person doesn't want to quit. They quite enjoy it. So why would I have them quit? But if a client's feeling the emotions of being a smoker, remember where our feelings are located, they're located in the unconscious mind. It means that maybe their unconscious mind has wanted them to quit for a long time. It just needs a little bit of a push in the right direction. So I need to find emotional leverage. Now, there will be certain questions that'll help you get more emotional leverage than others, but it really doesn't matter. If you ask enough questions in regards to them quitting, you're going to be pushing them in the right direction, which means whether you ask one question or you ask 50 questions, it really doesn't matter. I'm looking for emotional leverage. How do I know when I've got it? You usually see clients, they'll present in their tone. Some clients will cry. Some clients will get frustrated that they are a smoker. Some clients will get quite depressed. Some clients will just open up and give you their whole life story and overload you, but at least you know you're finding leverage. You cannot help a client with no leverage. So what sorts of things we need to look for are those criteria. We need to make sure they're feeling it. If they're not feeling it enough, you keep pushing them into this idea of a smoker, asking, if you don't quit, what will you lose out on? What does smoking do for you? How is it a problem? And you want to keep pushing down that road to get more information, because at some point that emotional leverage will present itself. But there is one question and one style of question I'd like to present to add inside this questioning cycle. And as a therapist, you might already have your own questions, and how you do that is at your discretion as well. But what I want to find out from my client is, give me a specific scenario. Now, why is this important? What will tend to happen when you start to see clients is a client will come in, you'll ask them about the smoking, and they'll tend to give you different categories. They say, well, I smoke in the car. I smoke when I'm stressed. I smoke when I'm here. I smoke there. I smoke when I'm doing this. I smoke when I'm not doing that. And already they're giving me different categories, and they're giving me their whole life experience of being a smoker. Now, as a therapist, this can be very, very tough to work with all this criteria and all these categories all at once. And why would we? And this is another main reason about why clients will relapse, is because a therapist will try and work with everything all at once and miss the point. Remember the position we talked about before? This is where this idea came from. If we take the position that your unconscious mind will do this for us, the idea I want to have in your mind, and the mindset I want you to take, is let's find out a single time and a single event when they were smoking last. Give me a specific example. I can work on one category at a time, and then have them realize that their unconscious mind just overcome that category. It'll probably find the pattern to do the rest. And this is what we're going to involve inside setting a context. So how do we do this? We want to find a specific scenario and find give me the example I want, so I know where to start. I need some place to start, like dominoes. You push down the first domino. What happens to all the rest if you line them up properly? All of them will follow. So I want you to think of the unconscious mind doing the same. We find the first category they want to work with. The unconscious mind will find the pattern and go, that was easy for them to overcome that category. Well, I'll just do the rest now as well while we're here. Why have a client relapse? That's the attitude I want you to have about their unconscious mind. And it's a very strong attitude to have, and it will really work in your favor, and you'll be very surprised just by taking on board that mindset, how successful you'll be as a therapist working with smokers. So I want a specific example. When and where? So I asked Joe Bloggs, when did you smoke last? Well, I smoked yesterday. Okay, where were you? I was at home or sitting on a couch and I was bored. Excellent. I've got my first category. Now I can work with this, and we'll go through the same techniques, the same priming, all that sort of stuff. And I want to make sure I've got some emotional leverage. So why are we smoking on the couch? Oh, Scott, I just had the worst day. I just found out that maybe my wife was cheating on me. Sorry for the horrible example, but let's just use this for now since it's come up. My wife's cheating on me. I sit on the couch and I was just contemplating the rest of my life, and I was stressed, I was angry, I was frustrated. Have we got emotional leverage? You better believe we have. So I can work with that category. If I simply ask, what we do on the couch, and they go, I was just bored, just had a smoke, I would probably want to ask them, okay, when's another time? Because I want that leverage. So once I've got the leverage, I can start to work with it. It's that simple. But what tends to happen is a client will go, well, it was yesterday, I was sitting on my couch, I was a little bit stressed, had a smoke. Because I just got back from work, I was so stressed, I was actually smoking all the way through work. And actually, I found myself actually smoking in the car. I normally don't smoke in the car either. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to stop at the pub on the way home. Before I go home, standing there with my mates, I was smoking the whole time. And they'll continue to go on and create such a big event when all I want is one specific example. So how do we get through this example? It's very simple. As soon as they give me one and I hear the leverage, if they start to give me more, I'll say, hey, let's just push those aside for now. Let's just concentrate on you at home. You told me you were stressed. You were contemplating your wife cheating on you, were feeling stressed, and you had the smoke then. Let's work on that now. So I'm working on a small chunk level rather than a massive story that they're giving me, because I'm setting those dominoes up. I want to flick over the first domino. I don't want to wave my hand over the whole thing because I'll mess them up. I want to watch them fall over in a nice pattern. So I hit the first domino, I've got my first category, and then I allow the unconscious mind to find the pattern that works for them. I allow their unconscious mind to work out how they can best overcome that problem using that category first. So once I've done that, let's say I've gone through that, I'm going to prime and say, hey, I know you're feeling bad about smoking now and about everything that was happening, but I want you to realize you're here for safety, success, and I'll set them for priming for success and all that good stuff. Then I'll set the context about their unconscious mind, realizing that they've done it before. And then I'll do my therapy, and then I'm going to do my testing at the end. Now, if I hear through my questions at the start that there's some information that I can use for my testing later, perfect. It gives me some more information to use for my testing rather than having to think of what I'll say. I'll say, hey, you told me you were having a smoke on the couch. Think about yourself on the couch right now. Do you think you'll have a smoke? You can see how that information will fit. The emotional leverage is key. This emotional leverage will follow them throughout the session. And I want you to realize that if they're feeling the problem, it means their unconscious mind is on board as well. If they're not, it means their unconscious mind is probably doing something else or is not quite ready. I want to get that emotion out of them and put that down as leverage. So the last thing I want to present to you is how do we work with the rest of the categories? You can see how the rest of the categories is a therapist would send a client away and say, hey, we'll work on this next time. After that, we'll work on this other one next time. Or maybe they've got those pre-planned 5 or 6 categories that they think all clients must go through, so they'll present their session like so. I want to introduce you to an idea I put together called Fractionation Retesting. So where does this sit? It's actually quite simple. Clients come out of trance. I'm going to test them. Do all my testing. And they say, no, I'm not going to smoke. And you're going, yep, awesome. Before they leave, I want to have another little chat to them. We call this a fractionation retest or another little context or priming story, if you will. And I'm going to point out that they did this. And it's going to sound something like this. I want you to realize, and I understand that you said that you not only smoke when you're stressed, you smoke when you're hungry and when you're angry. And I can give whatever category I want at that point. I want us to use all the ones they've given me rather than ones I've thought of myself. And I want you to realize that you did this before. You overcome smoking today, and you have no idea how you did that. So I want you to close your eyes again for me. And I want you to understand that your unconscious mind is powerful enough to not only overcome this part of your life, but it's probably found the exact way it could overcome all this other stuff, like the hunger, the anger, the frustration, all that stuff. I want you to realize all you need to do is just sit there now. So I want your unconscious mind to spend all the time it needs to just overcome anything else that would stop you from being a non-smoker, to find every scenario, to uncover any idea or emotion that would have you smoking again, because I want you to walk out of here being a non-smoker for the rest of your life. So I want you to sit there and just enjoy this trance again. And I don't know how long it'll take. I want your unconscious mind to realize that it can take all the time it needs to find out any scenario, anything at all, big and small, that would have you being a smoker again. So you can hear the same frame that I'm setting. It sounds like a little priming story, but what am I priming now? What am I setting as a context? I'm letting them know, I'm basically directly talking to their unconscious mind saying, hey, you just helped them overcome that category of smoking. Do the rest now. Let's not do it later. Let's do it now. You're here. You found the pattern. You enjoyed the experience. So get it all done now. And again, I'm putting all the power back into their unconscious mind. I'm keeping my position the same. Saying, hey, you just did this. Great job. Can you please do all the rest? Let's get it all done now. Let's get it all out in the open. Let's overcome everything now so I don't have to see this client again. And it's almost like I'm putting them back in trance. May not be as deep, it might be quite light, but that's where the fractionation idea comes into it. But I'm just putting them in there. As they come out, I'll do a little test again. I might go through the whole testing cycle, but usually at this point, a client is so empowered right now that anything you could say, hey, how do you feel about the pub smoking now? No, I'm good. I'll never smoke again. How do you feel about being stressed that you found your wife, unfortunately cheating on you? Oh, I don't care about her right now. I'm so happy right now. I'm a non-smoker. I'll get on with my life. It'll be fine. We'll work it out, whatever the case may be. So right now, you notice I'm keep repeating the same steps over and over. So realistically, if you look at everything we've covered, the technique itself becomes irrelevant. But that's when most therapists put all their own anxieties and worries into it, going, what technique should I use? What method should I use? It becomes irrelevant. Set it up beforehand, set it up afterwards, do the fractionation retest again, a little speech to say, hey, get everything done now. Clear out anything, any possibility that would have you smoking again. Do it now. And all you need to do, client, is just sit there, allow your unconscious mind to do it for you. And you'll know when it's done because your eyes will open, you'll feel amazing, whatever frame you want to set for it. So this is how, putting these steps in together, we can set up the session, we can end the session, we can conclude the session, and we can stop relapse with that little fractionation retest. So right now we've done all the work before the session's actually started and the end of the session, so your technique becomes irrelevant. You can use any good technique, bad technique, or in-between technique, and you're starting to set yourself up for success. So what I want to do is put that all together for you, give you those steps again. So we start with questioning. We're going to put them into pain. We just want to spend a couple of minutes, get some emotional leverage, make sure they're feeling this idea of being a smoker and what they don't like about it, etc. We're priming for success, setting a context for quitting. Your therapy goes in right there. And the last part is just the testing with a fractionation retest at the end, and you are done. And you can expect your clients to come out not only thinking, wow, what a magnificent therapist, but the therapist really took care of me. And this is a great story that will follow you as a therapist. But before we end up on our training today of how to dominate the smoking industry, I want to cover a couple of troubleshooting ideas that tend to be presented, and a lot of things I hear from other therapists that we train, and ideas that come up that tend to work against therapists rather than work with them. So this idea of client relapsing, I think the most common issue for a client saying, hey, it didn't work, is because a therapist will not test them. They don't do the fractionation retest that well. And also it might be a number of things. It could be the questioning at the start. It could be the priming for success. It could be any of those categories. But I think the most dominant thing is a therapist trying to work with the whole life scenario. They're trying to work with too much of a big chunk, trying to get it all done in one little technique. The approach is correct, but just take one little chunk at a time and then just point out that their unconscious mind can do the rest. Another troubleshooting idea is this idea of what do I do with a client who comes in who doesn't seem that interested to quit, or they come in because their partner or their friends has told them they should. The easiest thing to do is just send them home. We cannot work with clients that do not want to change. Even if they insist, hey, my wife really wants to quit, I want to quit, it needs to be the other way around. The client needs to tell us, hey, I want to quit, and my wife would love if I did. We want to make sure that the client wants to quit, and the client wants to quit for their reasons, not because they should or not because they've been told they shouldn't, and not to quit because it's the healthiest way to live their life. We want to make sure there's some emotional leverage, and you'll find this out through the questioning cycle. But if you run into it, you're not quite sure, just send them home and have them really consider it before they come back in if you're not too sure. The last troubleshooting idea I want to present is probably one of the most common things. What if my client needs to come back for a second session? It's very, very simple. Client comes in, sits down, you just ask them, hey, what happened? I want to set a starting point. And they say, well, I quit at all these other places and I wasn't smoking at the pub, I wasn't smoking on stress, but then I realized I'm actually going away on a holiday, and that made me a little bit stressed because I'm traveling alone. It's the first time I'm going to go overseas, and I think I'll probably have a smoke just to calm down my stress. Excellent. It doesn't mean you've failed as a therapist. It just means that they've realized that they left something out they didn't tell you, and you can just work on it then and there. Take them through the whole process, but you'll probably find it working about a quarter of the time because their unconscious mind will pick up on the pattern that helped it last time. So I want you to realize, for you as a therapist, your client comes back, I call these little mini power sessions. It's just cleaning up the last bit of dust, if you will, that was left on the floor of the smoker. Clean that up, and the whole house will be clean. The whole house being their unconscious mind will be nice and clean for them. So it's a little troubleshooting idea to work around, is not to say, oh my God, I failed. I was supposed to do it in one session, but now it's two. No. You'll more than likely find your client will come in almost apologetic, saying, oh, I forgot to tell you this last time. I just want to make sure I cover this. So that is the entire how to dominate the setup of your stop smoking clients and how to still charge a premium rate. So how do you charge this premium rate? There's nothing stopping you from doing these sessions in one session and charging the same as a therapist that would charge for 6. And could you imagine promoting yourself like that, saying, I do this in one session? Imagine the intrigue you'll get from clients. Now, there's nothing to say you can't do it in 6 or 10 sessions, that's fine. But it comes to a point where you start wasting a client's time. And if a client realizes it's going to take 6 sessions, that means there's possibility of 5 failures they'll have before they quit. It could set them up for a bad environment anyway. But who wants to quit at things? Who wants to fail at things, right? We want to set it up so, hey, you'll quit in this one session. We want to prime for success every time. And I want you as the therapist to take this away and prime your own success. So when you nail these maneuvers inside your clinical therapy setup or your career as a therapist, let people know. There is nothing stopping you saying, I do sessions in one session. Come along, it'll be easy. Everyone quits in one session. You'll have fun and you know exactly what you need to do. There's a little priming scenario for you there. So I really hope you enjoyed this. This is something that I use exclusively with every single smoker I work with. And it's been nothing but easier for myself as a therapist, knowing I used to do it the old way too. It's taken me many sessions to get through it because there was no setup. I jumped straight into the session, no setup. And after a couple of failures of that, I wasn't happy. So I thought of new ways to do things. And this is one of the easiest ways that I've found to add to my sessions. It's just success after success. And that's my ultimate goal for you, is to have fun with smoking sessions, and to make sure that you can still charge that premium rate and have people looking at you as the dominant force to help them overcome smoking, and you become known as the stop smoking therapist, which increases your career, increases your income, increases your success, and you start to have fun with therapy again. So that's all from me from now. Thank you so much for listening. I'd love to hear your success with this. Take these ideas away, put them inside of your session, and I hope to see you on our next training, which we're going to start to refine different types of therapy, refine different techniques and methods that you can use to become the ultimate successful therapist I know you want to be. So until then, this is Scott Jansen, and we hope to see you and hear from you in our later courses. And that's thank you from everyone from the Conversational Hypnosis Academy. Enjoy, and we'll see you very soon.